Having just turned the calendar year to the final month of 2020, as hard as it is to believe, I want to encourage you to navigate this final month of the year with stewardship and prayer and generosity. It's so easy to get caught up in materialism and debt, particularly this time of year. And those are two things that I know God doesn't want for you or me. So I thought this week I would build a little bit off of this past Sunday's message here at In Focus Church. Talk a little bit more about the sin of greed. And the reason I want to expound on that sin is I believe it to be one of the most overlooked and rationalized sin that we have and that we deal with, probably in comparison particularly to all of the overly thought about and or maybe over sensationalized egregious sins that we often compare ourselves to make ourselves feel better about the ones that are a little more subtle, that we are actually more susceptible to and is far more rampant than the things that we often point to. This is deception and treachery at its worst. It's a spiritual battle that we're in, and the enemy uses deception, subtlety, treachery. That's why I have actually said that greed is probably one of the most insidious sins that there are. So because of its subtlety, greed is more acceptable. Like we said, it's more acceptable, particularly compared to what we would consider more egregious. This is why we don't compare, because comparison never works for the Christian. Comparison doesn't only foster self-righteousness. It cultivates self-righteousness. But when it does that, it causes us not to look at ourselves in a way that God would want us to inspect our own hearts and lives and see exactly what it is that He is trying to change or affect for His glory and our good. Again, why this is such a subtle and deceptible sin. Some of this is because we consider greed a monetary issue, and it's actually a heart issue. The truth is you can have very little money and still have an incredibly greedy heart. I was joking with our staff this week that the reason why greed can be so subtle and that we're susceptible to it is we think about people with more money than us as having a greedy heart or a greedy lifestyle, and we don't. And I joked about Scrooge McDuck. Whether you know him or not, it doesn't matter. But we look at somebody like that who has a lot of money and we go, well, that's a greedy person and I don't have that, so I'm not. Has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of money that you have. This definition, I think, is actually helpful. It's an inordinate desire, our excessive love for wealth and possessions, for money and the things money can buy, and even for self-esteem, security, status, and power. Greed's object is money and things, but it is not identified with those things. Greed is a misplaced craving of the heart. It is a good desire gone wrong. God made us to desire possessions, and He gave us good things to enjoy as His creatures. It's fitting for us to enjoy the things that God gives us. But the problem of greed is not that we desire things, it's that our desires are misdirected or misplaced, and they're out of proportion, particularly as it relates to our desire for God. Also, another definition for greed is this: the desire for the wherewithal, usually money, to get what satisfies me, while regarding God as unsatisfying and people as expendable. Pride creates and nourishes greed as the unbending principle of self-centeredness beneath unredeemed desire. I guess the question to ask is, are our desires being redeemed so that we seek and desire God and love others more than we love stuff and things? So what is the antidote? Tithing, giving, and generosity are verifiable actions. Because the antidote, we need to daily affirm and say, is Jesus Christ alone. He is the decisive antidote to the sin of greed. But Jesus Christ is not the decisive antidote as some sort of existential saying. It has to have actions that follow. Jesus Christ is a person that we have a relationship with. And because of a relationship with Jesus, he is now Lord of our life. And because he is Lord of our life, we have verifiable actions that prove he is Lord of our life, which is tithing, giving, and generosity. Those are verifiable actions of our ongoing fight against greed in our hearts. It's interesting how many people tell me, even on a Sunday like this past Sunday, of how much they enjoyed the message. Man, that was powerful. I know it was really quiet in there this Sunday, but that was so powerful. It was so convicting. And that's great. But accolades are not the evidence of a changed heart. Changed giving habits are evidence of a message that's taken root and is having an effect. So what would please me the most is to see us be more generous. If there's not an uptick of, giving from 70% of the people that call In Focus Church home, then it's quite possible we've gone on deceiving ourselves and rationalizing our greediness. My hope is that this month will be the most countercultural month of giving maybe ever for us as a church. Because nothing about 2020 says that we should be generous as we close out this year. But everything about God and Jesus and who we are in Christ says that we should. I hope we see contentment, tithing, and generosity go up, and greediness, anxiety, and fear go down, diminish in our hearts and in our lives. This will equate to liberated hearts, full of peace, full of security, and us exhibiting biblical generosity. That's my prayer for all of us, church.